it's so difficult to make a juicy pork loin. I realize that it's a leaner cut of meat, but still I feel like it should be possible. So today I'm beginning my quest in figuring out an easy and delicious recipe for a juicy and tender pork loin. Can I do it? Today I'm cooking pork loin in apple cider in my crock pot. From everything that I've read online, I've learned that you don't need to brine a pork loin if you're going to use liquid in a crock pot because it's supposed to retain a lot of its moisture. We shall see. But make sure you subscribe to my channel because I already know that I want to try another pork loin in the near future. I'm going to roast it in the oven and I'll brine it beforehand so I can compare the two methods of cooking. Now, speaking of future videos, I'm going to be filming a Q&A video soon. I recently reached 5,000 subscribers on my channel, which is super cool, and there are a lot of new faces here watching Anne's Family Recipe. Hello, welcome. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of reintroduce myself, but also answer any questions you may have. It doesn't have to be about food, it can really be about anything, but leave them in the comments below and I'll try my best to answer all of your questions in my next Q&A video. But now, back to the pork loin. So I'm going to use my slow cooker today, and I'm going to rate the juiciness and tenderness of this pork loin on a scale of 1 to 10. So we shall see how it turns out. Today I'm starting with about a 4.5 pound pork loin, and I removed it from the plastic packaging, and typically there's a little bit of extra kind of juices that can be sort of a slimy consistency. I don't love that. So I patted it dry with a paper towel just so I didn't have to deal with that anymore. And then I sort of created my own very simple dry rub for the outside of the meat. So I used kosher salt, black pepper, lots of garlic powder, and then some dried rosemary. And I like to kind of crush that between my fingertips as I'm sprinkling it over the meat, just so the pieces get a little bit smaller, and it also releases the flavor of the herb that way too. Then I had my cast iron skillet, which was preheating over about medium-high heat. I added a couple tablespoons of olive oil, and then I placed my gigantic pork loin inside. So the goal was to sear all 4 sides of the piece of meat so it would have this nice crusty exterior and also would lock in the juices of the pork loin. Next, I prepped my crock pot. So I sprayed it lightly with some baking spray and then placed the seared pork loin inside. For the sauce, I combined 2 cups of apple cider with 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard and 2 heaping tablespoons full of brown sugar. Then I stirred that all together and poured it over top of the pork. I covered my crock pot and then set it to low for 8 hours. And then I remembered that I wanted to add onions to this. So I quickly sliced up a white onion, and then I turned the heat back on under my cast iron skillet just to about medium-low. I added a tablespoon of butter, and then I sauteed my onions just for about 5 minutes, just so they would start to get a little brown around the edges. Then I added those into the crock pot with my meat. Halfway through the cooking process, I did take the lid off and flip my pork loin over. Doesn't this look awesome, by the way? I love the bubbling juices and those golden onions on top. Yummy. Okay, so this was looking promising. I flipped it over just so that the top half of the meat was now submerged in the liquid, plus I spooned some of that cider over top, just trying my best to ensure a juicy and tender pork loin in the end. I covered it back up and the cooking process continued. And here is the finished pork loin. I asked my husband to film me taking the meat out of the crock pot, and I could not get a good hold on it because it was falling apart. So we both agreed that this was a very good sign. I removed a couple ladlefuls of the remaining juices into a glass measuring cup, and then I added a tablespoon or two of cornstarch, whisked that together until it was smooth, and then poured it back into the juices just to try to thicken them up a little bit. If I had taken the time to remove all of the liquid into a separate saucepan, brought it to a rolling boil, and then done this, I think it would have gotten a lot thicker, but I was being a little lazy. I already had a ton of dirty dishes in my kitchen, so I didn't want to make one more. There were still a few bubbles on the edges of the juices, so I figured it was fairly hot enough that it would at least thicken up a little bit. And it did, and it made an incredible sauce to pour over top of my meat and the things that I served alongside of it. You can see here that I grabbed a sharp knife to slice the pork loin, and it wasn't even really effective because it was just falling apart. It was super tender. I served the pork over a bed of egg noodles with some steamed broccoli, and I poured the sauce all over the meat and the noodles, and it was really, really yummy. Just a perfect, simple fall meal. The meat had such delicious flavor. I love that I created that herby crust on the outside, and then I had the sweetness of the apple cider and brown sugar along with that tangy, slightly spicy Dijon mustard. It was just all these great flavors combined together. Now for juiciness, I have a range of scores to share with you. The dark meat closest to the fat gets an 8 out of 10. It was really juicy, had a nice butteriness to it. Some of the other meat though that was a little leaner was definitely drier. I would give it about a 5 out of 10. So it wasn't perfect, but it still had delicious flavor, and with that sauce over top, it made all the meat very juicy. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, follow me on Instagram at Anne's Family Recipe, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked part 1 of my quest to find the perfect juicy and tender pork loin recipe. Thank you so much for joining me here in my kitchen, and I'll see you again soon with another family recipe.